Hello, I'm Nanda Shorsky. I'm the Executive Dean of Workforce Development, Economic Development, and the Indian Valley Campus for the College of Marin. We've had a wonderful session with many of our regional partners to talk about how we can actually take what we've done at the Indian Valley Campus with our organic farm and garden and migrate a model that's similar to that to other regions in California and possibly even take that outside of the state. We hosted the Migrate the Model conference because we have so many people who contact us regularly to find out more about how we established the Indian Valley Organic Farm and Garden. We have a unique partnership with the Conservation Corps North Bay, the College of Marin, and UC Extension program. Our hope is that the lessons we've learned can be passed on to our sister colleges and other regional partners, other workforce development partners, so that we can help other communities enjoy the benefits of having a teaching farm, a farm that promotes local food systems, promotes family supporting careers, and supports a healthy community.
I'm David Wayne Kuhn, and I have the pleasure to serve as the Superintendent President of the College of Marin. I'm very pleased that the college has been able to be a partner with the county. The Indian Valley Organic Farm Program is one of its kind in the nation. The fact that we're the only program in the United States with an apprenticeship program attached to it makes it truly unique.
Most of you know this context, but I think it's useful to get it down and really know the terms. Because if you navigate this, you've got to be using the language that the California Department of Industrial Relations is using. So industrial relations is the big department at the California level that first came out through the DLSE, stands for Department of Labor Standards Enforcement. They're the ones that come out and are you doing your payroll right? Who's on your farm, and if they're interns or apprentice or work experience, are you doing it in the right way? So they're the ones that are going to write the fines, and they really don't have a lot of patience. There's not a lot of latitude. So this is important just for students to be learning this, that farming is a business, and this is one of many agencies. And Peter and Mark, don't get them started, but this is who came to Marin and visited a couple farms and wrote fines, and really elsewhere along the coast made similar visits and triggered this whole thing unraveling, this 30, 40 years of paying it forward, of hosting an apprentice, and just, you learn so you want to teach someone else. Enter into the picture, the left hand of the same agency, Department of Apprenticeship Standards. So that's the unit that really then engages campuses like the College of Marin, farmers. They do it in all kinds of business sectors, and they already have them set up in any number of different businesses and industries. They just had never had an organic farming one. They have a couple routes they can do. They can do these are two more important terms. They can do an industry-wide standard, and standard's the word that you want to learn. Standard they call them apprenticeship standards. And they can do it industry-wide, or you can do a specific standard for each farm. And I think fortunately, and who's not here today, Kelly from Apprenticeship Standards, a really great partner, someone that really stepped up to the plate. She understood this and helped us navigate it and said, let's go specific. That way each farmer has the latitude in partnership with College of Marin to set it up the way they want it. So that's kind of the context, is we're down to having, for apprenticeships, this specific standard, and then we can talk more about the work experience, and Kathy's a great one to explain how that got set up here, but let's stay focused on the apprenticeship part of it. And so that's the context, I think, that helps. And then Peter, from your perspective and how you worked with Nanda.
Sure. Well, I started the story a little bit ago when I was introducing myself, of how the head of the Department of Industrial Relations, John Duncan, came to the farm and was looking at this problem of informal labor relationships on farms. And I think what really turned him around was interviewing, I brought back former employees who had worked on the farm. There were about 5 of us at the table. And I think hearing their stories and feeling their passion is what turned him around to wow, there's something here we've got to deal with. We can't just call it illegal. So he said, I'm going to have my Department of Apprenticeship Standards get in touch with you and see if we can do this thing. and that was the summer of 2010, just about 2 years ago right now. And it started a series of meetings and arrangements with that department. Glenn Foreman, I think he's still head of that department, I'm not sure. He came out, and Kelly, whom David mentioned, came out to the farm, and we started working up this idea. How do we take this standardized approach to apprenticeship that applies to industries across the board and apply it to organic farming? And as Dave mentioned, I think one of the really great aspects of it is that the farmer, the producer, can design their own program. I mean, there's certain standards, how many hours, has to happen in so many years. One of the biggest questions is compensation. Yes, there is compensation, but under the apprenticeship formula, it's a fraction of what is considered a journeyman wage. And so once you set that journeyman wage, let's say you set it at $10, I think it's something like a quarter or a third of that is the beginning for that first period of 6 months or whatever, and it ratchets up with experience, and that's a factor that people don't understand. Yes, there is compensation in this program, and that's just how it is, and it goes with the building of the experience. But the really cool thing about the program is that it's up to the farmer to say what kind of program is this and what kind of farm is it. And say a crop farm is going to have certain, a crop farm with direct marketing is going to have certain things such as farmers market selling, plant propagation, weeding, all these kinds of things, and you have to set out a certain number of hours within the 1,800 hours of the apprenticeship. You know, there are going to be 200 hours of weeding, there's going to be 300 hours at the farmers market, there's going to be 100 hours in the pack shed, that type of thing. And what I like about it is a different type of farm can set up a whole different thing. If someone like Mark doing an animal farm can have a whole different regime, you know, so many hours feeding the animals, so many hours lambing season, whatever the heck it is. I think that's really great that it's very customized and very focused on what that farm does. It's not just a broad thing. Back to the conversation, so the conversation with the Department of Apprenticeship Standards went on in the fall of 2010, and we sort of came up with what this thing's going to look like for our template farm. And the other side of this apprenticeship is what's called, I think it's called an LEA, which is basically a
Local Education Agency.
Bless you. And the in talking with Kelly and developing our program, the College of Marin seemed like the natural candidate to be the LEA for our template apprenticeship. And I was so grateful that made sense to Kelly, and we all, you know, besides COM being the local college, we also had this fantastic farm and garden program, which we were just hearing about from Wendy and Henry, that was, I think, in its second or third year. And I said, this makes total sense. And you have sort of an incubation place, and then you can have, you know, work experience branching out from it. So we started a conversation with the college at that point, and, you know, how do we do this thing? And there's a whole set of standards that the college has to deal with with the State Department in order to balance out the full apprenticeship program. So that's sort of the bones of how we got to this place with the apprenticeship and with the college. The one other thing I'll talk about is, and I've spoken to different groups around the state. I've been called in by the Department of Apprenticeship Standards to try and promote this program and talk about the first one. And I think the most important question is, what's in it for the farmer? It's like, why should I do this? Why should I pay somebody something and get into all this you know, there is a certain amount of paperwork, and there's oversight and meeting specifically with Kelly in our area to make sure the program is functioning well. And my answer to that is thinking about it as a producer, and thinking at least personally how I came up and how I had to go knock on a door and get people to give me a job, and how there was this whole informal kind of messy network of getting work experience on a farm that's still going on today under the radar. And how important it is to have a legitimate, clear path that somebody can enroll in a college, discover there's a passion or an interest in agriculture, and actually have a clear path into a career. I think that's really important, based on the experience of having done it the old-fashioned way. The other side of that, I think, is from a producer standpoint that we need to build a labor pool if we're going to change the face of agriculture, and if we're going to get away from corporate-controlled agriculture to a more localized and more agriculture that reflects our region. I think we need to build a labor force where the knowledge that's on the farms is being translated to the people who are going to be running those farms in the next generation. And I think it's in every farmer's interest to charge up that labor pool. And you may not get someone who's gone through 2 years of your apprenticeship may not stay on your farm for a long time, but you may get someone else who went through another farm who got great experience, who becomes your chief employee or your best worker or whatever it is. So I think it's definitely worth investing in, and that's the message I bring to other farmers. And I think that's the important thing, is to make this appealing to the farmers.
A couple quick things I'll say is that for both of these divisions, there's someone regionally staffed to cover your area. And they are, depending on their assignment, they're more receptive or not to engage you in even classes. And so they might be able to come and even just give a simple talk in a class to folks in learning to farm, to actually formalizing and setting up an apprenticeship program. And so you might, as you go back, look around, and in some cases we might share the same. I know in Sonoma that's the case, it's the same person.
I'd like to start, Lindsay, just take a few minutes, describe what your apprenticeship experience was, what you got out of it, all the good things, and the things that would have made it a better experience for you. I think that's going to be the educational piece here.
So I've kind of gone two different routes. I'll talk about my experience at the college first, and then I'll talk about my experience seeking a job. The University of Oregon has a farm on their campus, and it's a great farm. It's small. It's more of a garden, and they run similar classes fall and spring and summer. I took summer and fall and spring. And it was basically all about education, and it was, you work directly with the teacher. Every day you're out there, you're planting, you're learning how to seed, basically the practical stuff, as well as content of what it means to be a farmer, what it means to eat local, and having a relationship with your food. And so that content was really wonderful. I was really lucky to befriend my teacher, and that actually got my foot in the door. And without that program didn't really give you anything else as a stepping stone. It was just a course and an experience course, which was wonderful for what it was. But I got really passionate and wanted to take it to the next level and pursue it as my career and my passion. And so I partnered with my teacher and kind of slipped in secretly and became an AmeriCorps member. And she was starting a garden that connected with the local courthouse and ex-felons, and worked with, giving experience to these men to gain skills and kind of re-enter into society. But my role was to kind of be the garden coordinator, and so I was able to use the skills that I learned at the college, how to plant, how to seed, and basically work on the garden while she wasn't there. And I worked with the men and helped also teach them a couple skills that I had. And I was kind of just starting out, so it was a great beginner's role to not have a lot of responsibility, but still be able to practice. I think it's good experience, but it needs a little bit of structure to help that person develop those skills, as opposed to having them be the person to kind of learn the skills, and kind of, a little bit more structure. So that was my experience, and I learned so much, and I was really thankful for that opportunity. And when I left Oregon, I came back to Marin. I grew up here. I don't know if I said that. And I started knocking on people's doors, and that was really hard because, you have experience, but you don't really, and you want someone to apprentice you, to teach you, and you're seeking to become a farmer as your job, as your career, and you also need to make money, and that's very, very challenging, and a lot of farms do not have the finances to support an apprentice. And I'm really curious, Peter, how you've been doing it. And so I worked at Paradise Valley down in Bolinas, and I worked at County Line Harvest here in Petaluma, and then also a farm, a farm-to-table restaurant in Napa called Ubuntu, which is a wonderful place. And each one of those was kind of volunteer and also like very, very, very minimal pay work, which I know is potentially illegal, but that's how a lot of farms do get away with it. And there are people like me who are past the college section and are looking for that apprentice and that network. And unfortunately, in some of those positions, they do not, as the farmer doesn't give enough back, and they don't have that system of, you have this amount of hours doing this, I'm teaching you what to do, and you will learn this. It was kind of like, unfortunately, you might be my free labor. Yeah. But, you know, I am someone who really likes to, you know, pick your brain, and I took that responsibility on myself. I was like, okay, if there's not this curriculum, I am going to be proactive and seek it out myself. So as maybe the annoying intern that was like, oh, why are you doing this? How does this work? What's this? You know, but that's how I learned. And I think that in many ways, you know, a system would be a lot more beneficial and help more of the masses, and also make a better dynamic between the farmer and the apprentice. And that was kind of maybe missing in my experiences, that relationship that wasn't just, hey, here are the daily activities, why don't you do it? You know, really create a relationship and understand, you know, what it is to be a farmer as opposed to just a worker. And so where I am now, like, yeah, I know how to plant, I know how to build soil, I know how to do all these things, but I don't know what it means to run it as a business and make money. And, you know, I have no money and whatever, you know, how do I start? And, you know, how do I get land? Or, you know, kind of that next step.
So I'll speak then. I did do 2 seasons prior to doing a formal apprenticeship within